My name is Musaffa Akhawan. I'm here with my co-host Senge Sering in another episode of Human Rights Sentinel. Today we have Mr. Arif Jamal here. He's a journalist, author, political commentator from Pakistan, Punjab province. Two of his well-known books are Shadow War, The Untold Stories of Jihad in Kashmir, and Call for Transitional Jihad, Lashkar-e-Taiba of Pakistan, have received the global recognition, and he is the associate of Harvard University, New York University, and University College of London. Mr. Arif, thank you for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you in our episode.
Thank you for having me, actually.
You know, having those great book and writing about war and untold stories, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to coming and writing those books and your expertise.
The idea to write these books or to research these subjects came when I realized as a journalist that Pakistani media turns a blind eye to the issues that are really, really critical to the region. And since Afghan Jihad had come to an end, there was some sort of religious, there was a spike in religious violence in Pakistan. And I realized that no Pakistani media was ready to discuss these subjects and publish my articles the way I wanted them to. And then I realized that I should do deep research on these subjects. So that is how I started researching. I also published some of my findings in the Pakistani media to the extent they could take it. And all these articles I published in the Pakistani media for almost 10 years missed one point. And that point was the role of Pakistan's military in waging jihad in the region and helping grow the terrorist groups inside the country. This is how I started my research.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think because Pakistan's entire strategic paradigm is focused on interference and infiltration in Kashmir, and then later it's also added Afghanistan to it in the 90s, 70s, and 80s, and the human rights aspects associated with militancy and terrorism are often ignored because we try to glorify all these wars in the name of Islam and as a service to Islam. And I think what you have done is a great service, because there was so much media blackout that it was not going to come in the forefront if people like you were not really writing about it. So it seems like your focus had remained Kashmir for a long time. Tell us something about what is Pakistan doing in Kashmir to promote its strategic interests?
Well, from the very beginning, Pakistan laid claim on Kashmir, which was not really foreseen in the partition plan given by the British and accepted by both the Congress and All India Muslim League. But Pakistan was not succeeding in Kashmir in any way because Kashmiris followed mostly. Kashmiri Muslims followed Sheikh Abdullah, who was not in favor of Pakistan, and the real success of Pakistan army came when there was some alienation in the 80s after the 1987 elections in Kashmir, when they realized that they could recruit some people and do some violence, some terrorism in Kashmir, and attract international attention to the situation in Kashmir. And they started recruiting the disgruntled youth from the Valley of Kashmir. The initial plan envisaged something like 50 to 100 young people from the valley who would be trained in the Pakistani-controlled Kashmir and would be sent back. But what happened when they started inviting these disgruntled youth from the valley? They realized that there are not dozens or hundreds. There were thousands of young people who were ready to come to Pakistan. And within a year, from 88 to 90, late 88 to early 90, there were thousands of young people from the Valley of Kashmir who came to Pakistani Kashmir to get training. And there was chaos in the Pakistani-controlled Kashmir also. So this is how the jihad in Kashmir started.
What is, based on your expertise and what you are doing, what is the main reason of this young generation joining those wars and joining this conflict that is creating a chaos in the region rather than solving anything?
Sorry, I am not sure if I got your question correctly. Can you please repeat?
So there is a lot of issue and the conflict is happening, and the young generation right now is not, old generation is getting involved in this conflict and war and joining those terrorist groups. What is your intake on the reason of this young generation joining those terrorist groups?
What is drawing them towards militancy and terrorism rather than joining some an institute, learn a skill, and become professionals and have a different set of skills?
Well, if we are talking about the young people from young Muslim boys from the Valley of Kashmir in the 1980s, 1990s, then we see that Sheikh Abdullah had been compromised and they had nobody else to look to for guidance, and the Indian policies, they had alienated those people. So Muslims in the state of Jammu and Kashmir were really alienated from the Indian government, and they looked towards Pakistan. Maybe that could help them gain independence. The earlier people who came to Pakistan for training were looking for an independent Kashmir and not for annexation with Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And in a year or two, Pakistan actually suppressed all those groups, including Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, and instead promoted jihadists. And this is how they turned a struggle for independent Kashmir into a jihadist movement, which aimed at annexation with Pakistan. In the beginning, it was alienation with India, but then there was a lot of money which attracted people from the valley and other parts of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, Pakistan also started training Pakistani young men to go and wage jihad, because they realized that it wouldn't be possible for them to continue attracting people from Jammu and Kashmir. and one day they will turn their backs on them.
Right.
And how groups like Taiba came up.
I was reading an article by Dr. Taki, and he wrote that one of the reasons why Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, which is mainly an anti-Shia organization in Pakistan, has so much leverage is because they have a very close working relationship with the Kashmiri militants. And they are very useful in recruitment when it comes to, working with the Pakistani military. So my question to you is, Arif Jamal, is that when the militants, they go and infiltrate in Kashmir, usually it is assumed that they would attack non-Muslims like Sikhs and Buddhists and Hindus, but is it also possible that they would be attacking Shias in Kashmir? Are there any instances or any stories that you could share with us about Shia persecution by Pakistani militants?
Yes, 2 points. First of all, the terrorist groups like Lashkar-e-Jhangvi or Sipah-e-Sahaba, which have been working different names, and Lashkar-e-Taiba, they are all Sunni and different shades of Sunnism. They all have connections with Jihad in Kashmir, and this is one of the reasons they were allowed to grow in Pakistan. Even Pakistani Taliban, they are also have links with the Jihad in Kashmir. And from the very beginning, Pakistan suppressed any Shia organization to grow in Kashmir. There was one small group, Shia group, and it was actually their showcase why they just wanted to tell people that they do not work on sectarian grounds. But Shias were not given the kind of money others were receiving, and many of groups attacked Shias inside Kashmir Valley and elsewhere. But I think before the end of the century, the Shias were actually out of Jihad in Kashmir.
So my question is that is this the movement that is going to against the Shias? How much of it, based on your experience and your opinion, is how much of it is the result of political issue between Pakistan and Iran and the other countries, or is mostly about the religious based and some of those terrorist groups considering Shia as an infidel or kafir and taking that duty among themselves to wipe out the region from the infidels, as they claim?
Well, part of the reason is the rise of Islamic Iran, but that is not really the main reason. In Pakistan, there was a huge protest in 1980. I think it was in July 1980 when Ziaul Haq was ruling the country by Shias. And that has been probably the biggest protest in the history of Pakistan, which literally shook the government. So after that event, the government had to give in to some of the demands of the Pakistani Shias, but at the same time they realized that they will have to keep the Pakistani Shias under control, and they were turning blind eyes to terrorist groups which were targeting Shias. Mm-hmm. But when you raise such groups, they actually they could fulfill their hidden desires. The Shia Sunni schism is very old, but it mostly remains dormant. But in a situation where the Sunnis rise, they actually express their uh, their awakening by targeting Shias.
Right.
So both the scriptural issue and Iranian connection.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Recently, I think Pakistan is under a process of negotiation with the Pakistani Taliban, also called Tehreek-e-Taliban of Pakistan, TTP. And I think what they're trying to do is trying to minimize attacks on Pakistani soldiers and other law enforcement agencies by TTP. And in return, I think they're trying to negotiate with the TTP and provide them with probably a little bit more space. Do you think this negotiations that Taliban are trying to have with the Pakistani government will be a success? And what will be the impact on Pakistani society if the negotiations become a success?
In the short term, they may succeed in convincing the TTP to stop targeting Pakistani soldiers, but in the medium term, probably it wouldn't be possible. The TTP is actually negotiating with the army in order to have a breathing space and a situation where they can regroup and come back with a vengeance. It will simply increase terrorism inside Pakistan, and Pakistani army is definitely ready to pay this price if the TTP helps them in getting out jihad in the Indian part of Kashmir. I see a very, very bleak future for Pakistan because the Pakistani military has not learned anything, and the return of the TTP will bring a situation very similar to what happened in 2009 when the Pakistani Taliban were knocking at the doors of Islamabad.
So basically what you're saying is that, such kind of negotiations give a short-term quick fix to the Pakistani government, but in the long run, it kind of allow the Taliban to spread their influence in the society, create more space for recruitment, and make connections with other local extremist organizations for funding, as well as, then obviously you would agree that, it creates a problem for the minorities too, because then they will restart what, was happening about 10, 11 years ago when they were attacking non-Muslims as well as Shias and others within Pakistan. So it might create some kind of, breathing space for the Pakistani military, but not for the society in general. And what is the role of the Pakistani parliament? Do you think they will go with it, or because in the end, I think it's they will be the one who will be taking the blame?
Yes, absolutely, you are right. And one thing we must not forget is that these jihadi groups, they do not look at Pakistani military as permanent allies. They think that they are as infidels they are fighting otherwise. But they are ready to have a tactical short-term alliance with them because that helps them grow. and achieve some of their targets. While as far as the Pakistani politicians and the parliament are concerned, they are so powerless that they will simply rubber stamp whatever the military says. We have seen that in 2014 when they attacked Army Public School in Peshawar. There was the military came up with a national peace plan, and the parliament simply rubber stamped it. And we have seen that it was a temporary respite for Pakistan, and the jihadi terrorist infrastructure remained intact. They did not and could not attack the jihadi infrastructure. And now with the return of the Taliban, they have started reviving that terrorist infrastructure.
So, Mr. Arif, looking at the broader picture of the situation, if these jihadist groups and terrorist groups are growing in Pakistan and will eventually be a threat to the government as well, as the international committee and the countries who are claiming, quote unquote, that they are doing their best to defend the human rights and go against the terrorist groups, why we don't see that much pressure toward the Pakistan and preventing the government, because majority of those groups are getting the green light from the Pakistani government. So why the international committee is not taking the role of putting pressure on Pakistan to prevent creation of these terrorist groups or support from the government?
Well, one of the reasons is that the international community, not only the Western countries, but also India, they are clueless about how to handle a nuclear-armed military, and how to handle a state which is continuously dangling their nuclear arms. This is one of the reasons, in my opinion, which prevents the international community to take any concrete steps. And the second thing is, as far as the Western world is concerned, Europe and North America, all they want is to stop any jihad on their soil. And Pakistan is ready to oblige them. And they don't care much when it comes to India or countries like Afghanistan. Right. And there is definitely one theory to which I partly agree, is that in the West there is a feeling that at some point in the future they may again have to use jihadis against Iran.
Okay. But the nuke issue is not only in Pakistan. We have it in the other countries. But when it comes to the human rights, I feel personally that countries like the U.S. and Europe, they talk about this and they try to do something. But I have seen less when it comes to Pakistan or India to put that pressure. And is always they doing their best to hide the situation or not talk about it, and please the government, Pakistani or Indian government, rather than putting sanction or putting a pressure of preventing the countries from creating or funding those terrorist groups.
Yeah, you are right, and the reason is that the West still feels that they need Pakistan and its military for their foreign policy objectives. For example, in Afghanistan, and maybe in Iran. So this is why they do not they do not forcefully speak about human rights violations by Pakistani military. Pakistani military has forcibly abducted not hundreds, but thousands of innocent Pakistanis, and nobody is speaking about them in the West.
So another question that is come to mind is that Lashkar-e-Sahaba, Lashkar-e-Jangvi, or what is called Lashkar-e-Taiba, these groups that were rising in the region, how much support from the local they have is something that are they foreigner coming there and trying to create those groups and the government is funding them, or they have empathy of the locals and support from the locals toward protecting or that region, or going against what they call it jihad, or what going against the infidels.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of support from the common people to these jihadis, because for 70 years Pakistanis have been told and indoctrinated that India is a big enemy and it must be fought. Pakistan army has failed to fight the perceived enemy, and now there is there's a thinking that maybe they can win with the help of Islam, and so there's a lot of support. And let me tell you, the financial support to jihadis who go even to Kashmir or Afghanistan from Pakistan is very, very little. Most of the funds for jihadis come from common people, from mercantile class, from business class, and some from Gulf states. There are people all over the world, Pakistani diaspora, who send them money, and sometimes they send them money in the name of mosques, sometimes in the name of madrasas, but ultimately it goes to these groups, because these groups are built around a network of mosques and madrasas.
So I have a question. I think we were talking about, Pakistan is very much like right in the center of, promoting jihad. It's deep down, knee deep into it, and doesn't seem like, there's going to be any let up. It seems like it is going to be the fundamental part of Pakistan's policy for a long time. And yet we see that FATF is trying to remove Pakistan. We don't know yet. In October, it is going to do some kind of inspection. There's a 50-50 chance that Pakistan might get removed from FATF gray list. What do you think about it? Like, is it justifiable that when Pakistan is openly promoting jihad and terrorism in the neighborhood, and FATF is trying to clear Pakistan of all these allegations, and what is your take on it?
Yes, it is very unfortunate that it seems to me they will remove Pakistan from the grey list, and Pakistan will be back on the white list. And certainly it is not justified. But then, states have their own priorities, own interests, and I think Pakistan has been able to blackmail them into doing this because of the situation in Afghanistan. I think I don't know exactly what has been going on behind the scene, but definitely the objective situation and analysis will not let Pakistan be declared a safe country. No, it will be very, very unfortunate.
So,
Mustafa?
if you wanna, if you, what we are seeing is that the lack of education from the Western countries to deal with some of these issues is creating the safe haven for the terrorist groups or the countries who are funding the terrorist groups. If you want to put like one or two productive plan for educating the public of what is happening. Obviously, people who hear in this podcast or hearing your commenters on the C-SPAN and other news agencies, they can understand and they can get educated. But what are the main points that you think would be helpful to educate the public and educate the government toward how to deal with the situation?
Well, as far as the government is concerned, I don't think we need to educate them. They are definitely, they have better knowledge than us. And as far as the public is concerned, probably neither in Pakistan nor in these countries, public matters much when it comes to foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the impact of podcasts like this, or articles and books like mine, has a very, very little impact on them. And I'm very sure they know a lot more than what I and you know. So I'm very, very what should I say? Maybe cynic is not the right word, but I don't really see anything better coming up from trying to educate them.
Well, the reason I'm asking this is because obviously the government's doing their homework and they know about the situation, and the majority of the time they intend to ignore it rather than solve the issue. But I have seen it in different countries that the locals or the people who have expertise of that region could give better educational material toward how to deal with the situations. When you're talking about the conflict resolution, there is so many things that the locals or the experts who have studied that region and know the culture, know the region, know the locals, they can give better way of dealing with the issue.
Let me bring an example here, Mustafa. In Pakistan, there are so many Shia mullahs right now who are trying to bad for Pakistani government, and they're going to the Shias and saying, the Taliban that we have in Afghanistan now, they're different Taliban, they're new Taliban. They are not anti-Shia anymore, and they are our allies.
Which is the political interest of the Iranian government to go toward that. Yeah, sure.
Iranian government, definitely, but as well as ISI. ISI also want the Shia mullahs to communicate to the Shias that, we do not need to fear because these Taliban are very different. So I think what Arif, probably would agree with me here is that since all these, issues are being dealt through the prism of religion and, religious clergy, whether Shia, Sunni, Ahle Hadith, Deobandi, they are very active trying to communicate and mollify the Pakistani public that these people are our friends and they will promote Pakistan's interest and they will bat for us, and they will fight against the infidels along with us. So I think this is something. Arif, what would you say about it?
I entirely agree with you.
Well, the thing is, because of that, right now you see, I mean, we don't want to make this podcast religious, but we have seen that right now there is a rise of scholars and the mullahs and the sheikhs who are saying that, the way that we are seeing the situation is going on, don't believe us. Go do your study. Go sit down and educate yourself rather than sitting and listening to my lecture and my point of view, because they see that everything going south. People are taking the interest and taking the, either they taking the money from the government or the groups, or they are pushed and forced by the government or the groups to say some stuff and take the religion towards something that is not intended to be.
Yeah, I think there's this trend. Arif, I always wanted to ask, and we hang out, and probably this question never came up, but I think today it's a good time to share it with public. Are you writing any new book? Do you have any publication coming soon?
Yes, I'm working on. I have done a lot of research and I have a lot of material to write on. And I'm actually, last 2 years were very bad as far as writing was concerned. But for the last 6 to 8 months, I have been trying to catch up. Yes, I have been working on another book. Actually, 2 books. One, I am rewriting my articles, which are actually as current as they were 20 years ago. And I am trying to publish them in a book form, and also writing another book about last 10 to 15 years. So I think it will take another year or so before one of them.
So we will be keenly waiting for the new book. I'm sure it will have a lot of information for us regarding, the situation that is evolving in Pakistan right now.
Yes, but at the same time, I have restarted writing articles for the last 6 months, as you know, on different aspects of what's happening in that region. Also, now I can write more freely than when I was in Pakistan.
Would you like to share information about the website that you're running right now? I think it's called Alt Voices.
Yes, it's Alternative Voices, and it's and the URL is altvoices.org. I haven't been able to give much time to it, but I'm definitely planning to give more and more time to it now. There are some articles, and I think it will make you, it will give you a new, different perspective from perspective about what is happening in South Asia and Central Asia. That is my plan. So it would be, I think, very educational if you keep visiting it from time to time.
Perfect. Mr. Arif, being a human rights defender, being a journalist, being an author or political commentator, there's ups and downs on it. When you wrote your books and when you were, doing your research, I'm sure you have felt in your journey that, okay, what I'm doing, how much danger will bring toward me or my family. And our intent is to highlight those issues as well. As a human rights defender, as a journalist who have this duty to tell the truth and bring the actual event up. How much of thought you put on it, and how much you said that it is what it is. I have to be me and talk about it, because I want to encourage the people who are listening, if they have that knowledge, and if they have that expertise, to be like you and write those books. And I have not read your books, but I wrote it in my list of the books that I have to read. Senge is talking very good about them, so it's good to get more knowledge. So just give me a very brief. I know the time doesn't allow us to go through the whole journey, but give us a brief of how your journey and your steps will encourage people to do the same.
Well, if I narrate what I have been through, probably it will discourage everybody to do what I have been doing. I have seen death very closely a few times. And I really sometimes wonder how I have survived. And probably I would not have survived if I had not left Pakistan on that day permanently. I left Pakistan in 2007, end of 2007, and never went back, and probably will never go back. It was my passion for human rights, and I see my country of birth as a prosperous, democratic, modern country which kept me going. Otherwise, I think if you ask me now to go back and do what I had done, probably no, I wouldn't be able to do. And probably I think that should be enough for the listeners for now.
Okay. So that means you would go take another path. But I always say, and in every episode I repeat that we don't know how much effect we have to the society and to the people around us. And with I have Senge, through his work, mine from through my work at Shia Rights Watch, I have seen so many cases. People that I talk to who would tell me that, okay, I wrote that article, I read the article you wrote, or I listened to the talk that you had, and it changed something in me, and it did something that I could take that flag and go with it, and defend myself or write about what I've been going through. I'm sure you have heard it from the people as well. So don't be discouraged that this is the situation. Every one of us in this path is not easy. This path is every one of us been through it, and I've seen the stuff that if right now someone tell me, I would say the same thing. Maybe I wouldn't repeat that path. I don't know, Senge, what
I think what I have realized from people like Arif Jamal and their work and information they share is that the Muslim regimes have committed so many crimes, grave, situation that exist in all 56, 57 Muslim countries right now. Mm-hmm. The Muslim regimes have committed so much crime against their own people, the genocides that they have committed in Iran, in Turkey, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Pakistan, what Pakistan did to Bangladesh, for instance, what Saudi Arabia is doing, what Egypt has done, and so on and on and on. That we should, bring our own house in order before we start blaming the West for human rights violations and other issues.
Right.
Because they're, I have always said that, for instance, almost 3 million people were killed by Pakistani military in Bangladesh. So there's no room for Pakistan or, Iranian regime or Turkey. Turkey's like entire generations of Kurd, ethnic groups have been, completely eliminated in Turkey, right? So
Right.
I think there's so much that need to be done within our own societies first. And, clean all the mess that, our regimes create and the human rights violations that need to be documented. And, I think this is what Arif Jamal is doing. And, it's pretty commendable work.
Yes, Senge, I entirely again agree with you. Yes, it's our war, and we have to fight it. Nobody from the West will fight for us. And even if they try to fight for us, they will not win. We may win if we fight. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. And that is, I see that people in Pakistan some people in Pakistan, at least in my profession, in media, in human rights field, are probably more courageous and taking bigger risks than I took at that time. At that time, probably I was one of the very, very, very few. And at that time, when I tried to tell my colleagues, they wouldn't even believe. But today, everybody seems to know, although they are helpless. And today I hear more voices than at that time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have finally lost their romance with the military.
Right.
That is something encouraging.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, a lot of people say, like, Singh, why don't you talk about Palestine? And I was like, look, there are probably less than 100 people killed in Gaza or the West Bank in the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And in Pakistan, there are more than 200 people killed in a month or in a week belonging to lesser Muslims like Ahmadis or Shias or non-Muslims like Hindus and Christians and others. In the name of, preserving and promoting Islam or protecting Islam or something, there's so much going on within Pakistan that we cannot just use Palestine as an excuse to mask and shove everything under the carpet within our own societies so we can just distract our common, the poor domestic population with Palestine and Kashmir. We really need to take the responsibility and create a society that we could be, proud of, and then we can say, okay, now we have time to look elsewhere because we have done enough work to make our own societies and our own countries, livable, right? So this is, I think, something that Musaffa and myself and Arif, you and so many other people, we were talking to this Dr. Faisal from Malaysia the other day, and he's doing great work within his own country, trying to promote minority rights. So I think this is something that I think that the youth and the generation, they need to need to realizing that using Palestine and Kashmir is not going to make the Muslim world better. It is just going to help the regimes. It is just going to help the military, but it will never fix problems within our own societies.
Definitely. As you said, Senge, we have so many issues in our countries and our regions that we can solve and promote and protest for, rather than definitely we are defending the voiceless and the helpless. But if we are in the region that has so much conflicts and so much issue, let's talk about that more and solve that, and with that help would help us to be able to defend the other people as well. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. We almost talked for 50 minutes. The time flies fast. Mr. Arif, I really appreciate taking your time and talking to us, and I'm looking forward to read your books. And just for our listener to understand and know what are the best ways that they can reach out to you and talk to you. Are you on the social media?
Yes, I am on Twitter, and my handle is at Arif Jamal USA. I'm on the Facebook also. I think these are two good ways to reach out to me. Usually people Google me and then find out how to get to me, and I haven't heard anybody having any difficulty reaching out to me.
Perfect. Yeah, we will put that social media handles on our podcast as well for our listener who are want to talk to Mr. Arif and get some insight. And also, if I'm remember right, it was altvoices.org as well that will put a link in our podcast as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arif. Thank you for your great work, and keep it up.
You were listening to another podcast of Human Rights Sentinel.